I've got 4 data sources here. I'm using one of them, which is the small area population statistics here. They're called SAPS or SAPS, and it's data from the census divided up by electoral division. In Cork City, we have 74 electoral divisions in the old Cork City, and we will have 92 next year. We don't know if the census will go ahead next year, but if it does, we'll have comparative data from 5 years back and then next year. Another one you might be interested in is the household travel survey, which people complete about much more than the journey to work. The small area population statistics tells you about how people get to work or school, so they're 1 journey per day. Household travel tells you a lot more. There are loads of other data sources, things like the Cork City Profile, which has a lot of data about where people live and how they work and their environment. And even things like this, continuously updated, every car park from the queue network of queue parks. So it's the live number of cars parked in the car park or the number of free spaces left right at this moment. So you can see how busy Cork City is. This is the small area population statistics looking at the population density. So from 0 up to 20,000 people per square kilometre. And you can see from this that there are a couple of areas, just 2 really, of the Glen and the area around the showground. It's not the showgrounds, is it? The Knockray and Commons, where there are 700 people per square kilometre. And in the centre, there's Shandon and Southgate, where it rises to 13,000 people per square kilometre. And it's not necessarily high rise, it's terraces that give you that kind of density. But overall, there are 3,000 people per square kilometre across the old city boundaries, the 2016 city boundaries. 3,000 people per square kilometre, it sounds like a lot, but if we all spaced ourselves out inside the city and reached out in any direction, it's 20 metres to the next person. It's actually a lot of space that you'd have around yourself. Within Cork City, there's one big band running up the River Lee from UCC into the city centre, where the majority of people walk or cycle to work, which is really interesting that we already have areas that are naturally walkable. It doesn't include the shopping district, which is quite interesting that we have areas where people do walk, where it's not necessarily the nicest place to walk. And then we have areas where people don't walk, where it is actually pleasant to walk. And Tivoli, obviously, there's height and there's distance. There's no resources up there to walk to for most people. So there's a small amount of walking up there because of the heights. Across the whole of Cork City, it's interesting that there are a couple of areas where, in fact, a lot more than the majority, up to 70% of people walk or cycle to work or school. And in the city centre, right in the middle, the majority of people don't even own a car. So we've got these vast bands of people who, even if there was all the space to drive, they still wouldn't use it because they don't own their own private vehicle. And this isn't just driving yourself to work. This is using the car. They don't own a car. They don't go as a passenger or as a driver. Looking at Cork County, it's very different. The average population density of Ireland is 70 people per square kilometre. And in Cork County, sorry, I think it's about 130 across Cork County. And the population densities don't support, in most places, people cycling or walking to school or work. So a lot of the things that you said about Cork City, you wouldn't be able to say about Cork County. If I looked at the city centre, I did this with Google Maps, and I worked from Waterstones. And moved outwards until I found my 15-minute boundary, the green area from Waterstones, from the centre of Patrick Street, walking outwards. How far could I walk if I walked 15 minutes in any direction? It's actually a huge area out to St Patrick's at one end and Mardyke at the other, down to Turner's Cross and up almost to Blackpool. And that's the area I personally feel I could walk in 15 minutes. The blue area is the area I think I could walk in 30 minutes. And the red area, which is pretty much all of the city, I could walk to in 45 minutes. So there's a large area of the city that could be walked. And I've taken this from the city centre, but actually in terms of the 15-minute city, how far could you walk? What you want to do is build out that livability to other areas. So from your home, how far could you walk in 15 minutes? Would you be able to access your GP? Would you be able to access your school? Would you be able to access university? Would you be able to access a pharmacy, a supermarket, all of the usual things that are part of everyday life? So we'd want to build out the greenness of the other areas around, say, Blackpool, around Ballinlough, around Douglas, all the places where there are already centres. Can we make them more livable, walkable and cyclable? In the city as a whole, the city centre, inner and outer, what I've taken as my 15-minute, my 30-minute and my 45-minute areas, the largest form of people getting to work or to school is on foot, which is quite striking that in the whole city, the largest form of transport is on foot. As a car driver or a car passenger or a van or a motorcycle, that actually adds up to more than walking on foot. But foot is the predominant form of transport. And in the city centre, there's this big drop here. So between the whole of the city and the city centre, you see there's far less car driving within the city centre area. If we looked at the idea of living within the things you need, how big a population density do you need to be able to support 15-minute cities or livable areas where you could cycle or walk to work? And Cork City has a population density of about 3,000 people per square kilometre on average across the whole city. The nation has 70 people per square kilometre. And that means for a lot of people, for say a Gaelscoil, where there are 60 Gaelscoileanna in the country, 66 in the country, nationally people would have to be within about 20 kilometres to reach a Gaelscoil. In the city, where we've got a population density of 3,000, almost everybody should be within a 15-minute cycle ride, or say a 20-minute, 25-minute walk of a Gaelscoil. And they're easily within a 15-minute walk of a post-primary school, of a large supermarket, and of a GP. And it's actually quite striking how few people a supermarket or a large supermarket or a post-primary needs as a population base to support their operations. We only need a population of, say, 3,500 people to support one GP. So at a population density of 3,000 per square kilometre, you could have a GP in every square kilometre of the city. That's if people were evenly spaced, and GPs are evenly spaced. But obviously, business tends to migrate to where people are. So there'll be some people out nationally who live a long way from the things they need, and people in cities live very close to the things they need. And looking at the way that that accessibility expands, with walking, if I take a 15-minute walk from the city centre, I can access a lot of the city. If I take a 30-minute walk, I can access 4 times the area. Walking twice as far, it gives you 4 times the area. If I cycle, it's about 8 times the area. And if I cycle for 30 minutes, it's, I don't know how much, 30 times the area, but I'm cycling all the way out into the county. So giving people access to good cycle facilities, giving people access to good pavements, gives them walkable access to a large area of their city. And then I also looked at the small area statistics for 2002, and I have some big concerns about where the city is going and the kind of developments in the city. If we look at the way the city is as it was recorded in 2016, there's a big band of working age population across the centre of the city. And these are predominantly the university, the business districts, the working districts of the city where people tend to live and work. Working age population, obviously, trying to live near where they work. But it also means that there's a lot of masculinity in the city. The gender ratio is 58% male in St. Patrick's, where I live, which is not quite 2 to 1, 2 men to each woman. In the area around the CUH, it's the other way around, 41% female, so almost 2 women to each man. But the striking thing about this is that it's changing. And a second part of it is that the proportion of children is falling. And there's a big band around the areas where people work, where it falls as low as 4% of the population being children, as opposed to 29% out in the suburbs. And children comprise about 30% of the population. So you'd expect to have an even balance, but the city is somehow segregating people into working age and not working age. And then I have a final graph, which is the population change in absolute numbers between 2002 and 2016. And the city has created space for a large group of people aged from 25 up to about 60. And there's an excess of men in that influx of new people to the city. And then combined with it, the city has lost children. What's really striking is the loss of young women. So 20 to 24-year-old women have left the city in droves. It's 500 or so loss in the population of 20 to 24-year-old women. And there's also been a decline in old people. Again, more women than men. And I imagine that the style of new architecture is less appealing to old people, to families with children. It's less appealing probably to women, and it's more appealing to single men. So we had this big influx of single men coming into the city because the architecture permits it. And what we should be doing is making more space to make sure that we have a balanced demographic equilibrium within the city. And I was thinking, sorry, of this from a very personal point of view, that I'm getting old, I've been ill, and trying to walk around the city with a stick is actually hard. And it's got harder, I mean, not just because I've got older, but it's got harder because the design of the city has become much harsher. There are big wide pavements, big wide streets to cross, and the radius curves where there should be crossings. And a lot of that, I feel, is driving out the kind of population balance you should have to create a population balance that's maybe economically more attractive. So we should see next year, I mean, we don't know with the pandemic, will there be a 2021 census, or will it be delayed like the 2001 census was by foot and mouth? But we may see next year the same kind of change repeated again. So thanks very much.